Welcome once again to Jay and Dave's Sports Bar. Some news for you. We're actually going to shut it down and not do a podcast this week because it doesn't really matter. We've already clinched a spot in the Mountain West Conference Championship game, so like the Boise State football team, this week is irrelevant, and we'll see you next week here on Jay and Dave's Sports Bar. Goodbye, everybody.
I mean, it is an odd place for them to be because usually, at least this last week means something.
And it doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't this time.
The funny thing, the only reason to pay attention in this game is because of a potential New Year's Six bowl game. Outside of that, they can still win the Mountain West and go to the Vegas Bowl if they lose.
Right.
It's almost like Ohio State. Like last week, they needed to beat Penn State.
Yeah.
They can lose to Michigan this week and still,
which would be hilarious,
accomplish everything they want to accomplish.
Which would be hilarious for them. But yeah, no, I mean, I think it was just funny that game last week meant so much, and then everyone's like, "Yep, playing Hawaii," and then it's like, you still have Colorado State on a short week on the road again. So it's,
and it could snow.
Yeah, who knows? So there is something, and you know, at least with in what Harsin mentioned though, they could go undefeated in the Mountain West, and I looked it up since
that guy left,
since TCU did it, and they went to the Rose Bowl.
Yep.
How many teams do you think have gone undefeated in conference play?
In the Mountain West? I don't know if there was one that has.
There's been one.
Not in our division, or not in Boise State's division. I'll go San Diego State.
It was San Diego State, I think, 2015.
Huh.
Yep, only one. So, I mean, like for Boise State, they've never done it since 11 at all, and only one other team has done it, and it's only one time.
Kind of surprising.
A little surprising.
Like, I think we knew
the standings
that.
Before that, it was like almost every year somebody did.
I think we knew that, but you know, just to even have Coach Harsin acknowledge it was kind of like, oh yeah,
it was just,
I guess that is.
It was something I had
true.
thought of before, and then when he said it, it was like, oh, I guess I had never like said it out loud.
Well, mostly because anytime we bring something like that up, it's like, oh no, 1-0, and we're going next week.
Or people online.
I mean, I wanted Dave, you're totally right about that. I wanted to bring up the fact that, you know, they haven't lost to a team in the division, not conference, in the division, in the Mountain Division, in almost 1,100 days.
Yeah. Which is so funny.
2016, November. That's the last time.
Because before that, they were like, they had that run where they were 4-5 against their own division. Where like if people now are being twidiots about this team, they were back then. But could you imagine that happening now? I mean, there would be legitimately people wanting like a coaching change.
Oh, they would.
But think about that.
100%
against their own division, it was 4-5, and that was like, this doesn't happen at Boise State, and they turned it around.
It was kind of parts of 2 years.
It was.
Too.
Yes, it was. Yes,
so it wasn't like in one season.
Correct.
Which kind of helped dilute that a little bit. But man, I wanted to ask it, didn't. Mostly because like I don't really know what you get from that either.
Right.
Like, oh yeah, it's cool, but we want to be 1-0.
And then they're like, you're like, it's important to win games in our division,
right? Yeah,
like, yeah, true.
We basically know everything we need to know about that streak, and the most impressive thing about it isn't what somebody's going to react to it. It's the fact that maybe an opposing coach reacting to it would get you somewhere, but
could be.
Mostly it's just the fact that they haven't lost to an opponent in their own division in almost 1,100 days, and they can wrap up a perfect season and push that streak to almost 1,400, 1,500 days by the time they actually get a chance to drop another
play
game,
somebody. Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. No, I agree. That's been impressive, and if that is what you think the primary goal should be, they've at least put themselves in position to get that goal, which is winning the conference.
I mean, can you imagine
if you think it's New Year's Six, then we're talking something different.
Can you imagine being a team in that division? Be like,
oh, good.
None of you other guys have beaten these guys either. You know what I mean?
Right.
Nobody's helping anybody. Somebody, I don't even care. Somebody beat them.
Even a hell of that Air Force team this year is good.
Yeah.
Their only two losses are Boise State and Navy.
I'm glad you brought that up, Dave, because and Navy's 9-2.
Correct, Amundo.
So their losses are as good as any losses you'll find out there, especially out of the group of 5 teams. But it's unfortunate that Boise State played Air Force so early, because I feel like there's perspective and weight that's lost in that. Like if they played Colorado State back and when they played Air Force and they play Air Force this week, oh man, everybody'd be like, this is the game, and if they do this, they could jump somebody or whatever. You know, they're not getting enough credit for beating a 9-2 Air Force team. Air Force, if they win this week, and they should, they're going to finish with 10 wins.
Yeah. If you think about like in 2016,
excuse me,
they finished the season there at Air Force. They lost. But if that sort of a game was this year, like as much as we hyped up the Utah State game,
Oh, that would have been bigger.
it would have been much bigger.
Yeah.
And so it is, but like you said, they beat them in September. Mm-hmm. So that might as well be 100 years ago.
It might as well be. I don't feel like they're getting nearly enough credit for it.
And they got a bye after that, and it was just it was just a long,
Yeah. Obviously, you know by now, he's Dave Southern of The Athletic. I'm Jay Tuss, sports director over at KTBB. We're going to break down a number of things today. We are going to look back at Utah State, a dominant performance by Boise State in every facet of the game. Look ahead to Colorado State just a little bit. We're also going to give you a little insight to maybe who we will be voting for our postseason Mountain West Awards. The Offensive Player of the Year is an absolute mess. I don't know if it's ever been more confusing than it has this year. It's nuts. There's always a couple guys you can lean on. There's nobody this year.
There's been difficult decisions because there's been like 3 great options.
Think of the days where they had Jeremy McNichols and Brian Hill and wasn't Donnell Pumphrey too?
It was those 3, and that was the year that I voted McNichols.
One of those guys got left off the all-conference team.
Yes, and it was McNichols.
Yeah.
And I voted him for Player of the Year.
And now it's like either any one of those guys would have been like, thank goodness I'm just voting for him. They run away with it.
Click, done.
Not the case this year. So that's what we're going to go over throughout the rest of the podcast today. And I guess we will start by looking back at Utah State because, you know, Dave, we sat here last week and we talked about it. And we talked about it on the pregame show. And, you know, I felt Boise State was going to go down there and put their best foot forward. And they were coming off of, you know, arguably their best performance of the season against New Mexico, so they had some nice momentum. But I did not think in a million years they were going to go down there and win by 35.
My editor messaged me during the game and said, tell me in all honesty, did you see any of this coming? And I said no. You know, I did a radio hit, you know, with our pals Caves and Prater this week or last week, and my prediction was Boise State was going to win. So I was right.
Hey-o.
Except I mentioned that they would probably win by single digits.
I said the same thing, Dave. I said the same thing. I thought that it would kind of come down to a fourth quarter and either a backdoor cover or Boise State just kind of, you know, extending their lead at the last
second. They're up by 14, and then Utah State gets a garbage touchdown.
Something kind of like that. I mean, that's kind of what I figured. And I mean, it was not like that. Boise State led 28-0 after the first quarter. I mean, just to show you how dominant that first quarter was, they only led UConn last year 24-0 after one. They led UConn 41-0 at halftime. They had 42 points on the board by halftime of the Utah State game this last weekend. So, I mean, it was a lights-out show on offense, defense, and special teams because they scored on offense, defense, and special teams.
And that's the thing to me that makes that win so impressive was the stakes and just putting it all together in November.
Dave, that was a mini Mountain West Conference title game. Like it was for Boise State.
I mean, it's the Mountain Division Championship, essentially.
But you're not getting to the Mountain West title unless you get there. So I mean, like it was a little mini version of a championship game.
Yeah. And they just smoked them. I mean, there's no other word for it. I mean, like I literally, after Avery Williams did the punt return, I just tweeted. It was just reflexive. I just said, "Ha ha ha ha! This is a bloodbath." That's what I said because it was like this. That was an.
So wait, you had that tweet and the "Do you want to see dead bodies" tweet?
Yeah. Oh.
Man, where was your mind at on Saturday?
Wearing a black metal band shirt. I've got. Do you have someone to talk to? For me? No, but I mean, like that reminded me of what the fans here are used to seeing. Them just throttling a conference opponent.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty good one at that. So so that was. I don't want to say. I mean, it didn't necessarily change my opinion on this season because you know at the halfway point when we talked about it, I thought they would go 11-1 and lose in the state of Utah, and that's what they did. But that game really impressed me. That the fact that like you always talk all season, this team hasn't quite put it together. They haven't quite put it together. Well, they did.
Yeah.
And they did in November. I mean, better late than never.
Better late than never.
If that's when if you want to be peaking at that time, then good on them. And I think that says a hell of a lot about the coaching staff. Yes, from Brad Bedell to Brian Harsin.
I feel like usually with this team, even if they get off to a slow start, the pieces of the puzzle finally flatten down and click in with all the other ones, you know, usually by about mid-October or so. Yeah, like there's still much more time left in the season. It's just happened a little bit later this year. They still managed to go 9-1 before it happened. Now they're 10-1 and looking as good as they have at any point in time this year. Two things that they kind of lacked showed up in that game too, and it was the ability to get a couple turnovers. They did that a little bit against New Mexico too, but they had a pick six, another pick down when Utah State was driving down to score late in the game.
Pretty late.
Didn't really matter, but still another interception you can tally up on the board. And they ran the ball as good as they have all year too. As good, as consistent, as powerful, as intimidating, all that stuff as they have all year. And I mean, anybody that you ask over there, they will quickly admit that that was the best game by the offensive line this season.
Yep, absolutely. And it's hard to argue with that.
Yeah.
And they didn't have to dress it up. And I'd written about it recently about the O-line after they were really bad against Wyoming.
Dave, such a good point. And what he means by that, if you can't figure it out, is they've talked like, let's go back to the UNLV game. They actually had a pretty good day rushing, but it wasn't necessarily a traditional ground game. They had to get John Hightower involved, Khalil Shakir involved.
Killian scored on a run in that game.
Killian, yes, with John Hightower at quarterback. You know, they kind of had to really get a little creative. But for the most part against Utah State, it was let's line up and do this, and that's what you want to see out of you. As fun as it is to see John Hightower and get the ball, and as good as he is and explosive as he is, you would like to be able to lean on more of a traditional ground game instead of having to always spice it up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a trope and it's cliche to say it, but like. The numbers bear it out. If you can run that way, you're going to win a hell of a lot of games, especially here. And that's the way that they've kind of built themselves. I think a lot of people always are drawn to the quarterback stats, which are always pretty good. But when you have 10 straight 1,000-yard rushing seasons, there's a reason. And they've won a lot of games in that span. And when I wrote about my best of the decade, only 4 teams, I think, have won more games than Boise State since then during that whole span. And they're probably the 4 you're thinking of.
Yeah. So. You brought up the 1,000-yard streak. There is a real possibility, and I would even say that we have now shifted into likelihood mode that George Holani is going to get to 1K.
Yeah.
And, this really reminds me of Alexander Madison's true sophomore year when he became the starter. He only, I say only, rushed for 1,062 yards that season. But, man, there was a while there where everybody in Bronco Nation was holding their breath like he needed a big performance, and then he got a big performance that, really – got him a big portion of what he needed to. Wasn't that the Colorado State game?
Yes, if it was the sophomore year, so that was 17. That was on the road.
And he had over 200 yards. He was a monster.
Yeah.
Happened late in the year, but he's able to get close enough to 1K to push him over 1K eventually. And
because then he got dinged up, and then he hardly played against Oregon.
Yeah.
So,
but now George Holani's at 870. He needs 130 yards somehow over the next 3 games. Colorado State Mountain West Championship bowl game. He needs 130 yards over those 3 games. It works out to about 43 yards per game in order to get to 1K. We were talking to him for the first time, might I add, on what are you
doing the math in my head? 63.
63?
No, 43. Yeah, you're right. 43. Sorry.
It's okay.
Oh, why am I questioning
this
we
got to double check the math
sometime.
Guy.
Okay, go ahead.
You did make me take a step back there for a second. Like, sorry, did I get it right? But you look at George now, and we talked to him for the first time this week, and even he George by no way was he saying, I'm going to go out and rush for $130 against the Rams. He doesn't talk like that either. But
that's how CU players talk.
He did kind of say at some point though, that's we got to have a good game this week.
Yeah.
You kind of tell he's not thinking 3 games from now. He's in his own mind, maybe let's go do it this week.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Why not? Don't let it be a question. And it's clear that they talk about it. And I asked coaches about it in August. Do they talk about the streak? Yes, they do. And it's part of recruiting. It's part of.
I will say this, real quick, and it's funny how the season progresses and the narrative changes, or maybe some of the answers change once maybe somebody gets a little closer to 1,000 yards. Because I do remember asking about that too.
Early on, and they were way
back at the beginning of fall camp, when it was who's going to be the running back, who's going to try to get there. And some of the coaches were like, I don't ever really remember using it recruiting or ever being 1,000 yards, 10 straight seasons. And then the first time we talked to George Holani, within 2 minutes, we're like, did they use that as a recruiting tool? And he's like, yeah.
Yeah. and he asked the offensive lineman, he asked Ezra, and Ezra was like, oh, we know all about it. It's
I was all right. I get it. You don't want to be individual streak, a lot of pressure to get to 1,000.
You don't want to set it up, right.
But come on, that is an awesome recruiting advantage.
God, yeah. We've seen some of the stats that they use. We've been in the recruiting lounge on game days. You see, they have the boards up where it's most livable cities in the United States. Boise's way up there. Then they have most wins since whatever. Yep. That's up there. We don't see that thing, but I can guarantee you when they're I can assure you when they're recruiting running backs, if they go into Lee Marks' office or whatever, there's something up there that's gonna that's.
I mean, you're not gonna be like I know nothing about the band on Dave's shirt. I want to be like, you're not gonna be like the band on Dave's shirt and be a one-hit wonder at running back here at Boise State. Like a 10 straight years, potentially 11th. There's been a half dozen guys involved in this streak, if not more. Now that Holani is added to the picture, I mean, like, there's a good chance if you come here, you're gonna have a shot to rush for 1,000 yards, which. What does that mean for you after college?
Yeah.
Probably good things, or at least an opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I can guarantee you this band knows nothing about football because they're from France. So anyway.
Are they more than a one-hit wonder?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, in that scene, they're more than one-hit wonder. I don't know if I know, like, any of the, like, well, you translate
If
from
they
French.
were a college football team, who would they be? How do you, what is it?
It's Alcest. Yeah.
Okay. If they were a college football team, who would they be?
Oh, my God.
Come on, Dave.
Oh, man. What city has a good French population? I was like, Montreal. I don't know. That's a great question. Oh, man. That's a great one.
Underrated? Are they?
Yeah. I mean, they're underground, but they have they can mix like really hard, angry stuff, but it can be very beautiful at the same time.
I'm thinking Lane Kiffin.
Less edgy, but yeah. They're a little more mysterious and whatever. But yeah, their new album's great, by the way. But anyway, with Holani, we were trying. I was
get back to this. Okay.
I was counting this. We're like, are we talking about football or football? See, in France, they like playing soccer, which is no.
Well, even
okay, so we were going through it during the game. Mm-hmm. Starts with Jeremy Avery. You have DJ Harper. Mm-hmm. You have McNichols twice. Mm-hmm. Ajayi twice. Mm-hmm. Madison twice.
Yep.
And then what was is there one more?
Doug Martin.
Doug Martin was in there. So there you go. And I asked George about that. What it means to him to maybe be among that list. If you think about that, like, that's insane.
Dude, every single one of those dudes, except for Jeremy Avery, got a shot in the NFL.
No, he's got a shot. And then Avery was in the CFL. CFL.
Right. CFL. There you go. Hey, it all ties back together.
I don't think he played Montreal.
But think about it. Not only they all have at least a carry in an NFL game, because even J-Mac last year got his first carry for the Colts.
Doug Harper didn't. DJ Harper didn't. I remember people calling him Doug Harper.
But he did get into camp there for a little bit.
Yeah.
So I mean, like,
and also he's coaching in the CFL.
He is.
Man.
Wow,
you want to talk about the CFL more? Let's talk about the CFL. Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Congrats to them. That guy got to finally wear pants. That's their fan. That guy's awesome. But George did say.
By the way, he had some type of pants on before. It's not like he didn't have any pants
shorts.
on.
He wore shorts. Then he put on Zubas.
Just kind of had to clarify that.
Then he put on Zubas, which seems very Winnipegian of him. But Holani wanted to be part of that list.
Right.
Don't worry, my mind can get sidetracked, but I'm always getting back on the highway, buddy. But anyway, it was cool to talk to him. Every time this happens, you get a guy for the first time, and they're obviously a little shy, a little reserved, but like that sort of thing, you could tell did mean something to him, and he was honest about it.
I feel like it was like the one thing that he was really cool with talking about.
Yeah, probably.
And again, it's just because first interview, like these guys are cautioned before they meet with the media. Don't give them anything. We get it. But that was like the one thing that like I felt like he really was kind of like, yeah, like I know about these guys before. I've looked up to them, especially Alexander Madison. And George is going to be a good dude. I hear that he is a little shy too.
Just naturally.
Naturally. That makes sense. But he's only a true freshman, which means there are at least 2 more seasons of George Holani. I mean, like, I don't mean to put the cart before the horse here, but playing so much at such an early age with 2 more guaranteed years of eligibility at Boise State, I mean, he's a guy that if he projects well, let's just say, and he could really push for a number of rushing records, or at least shoot his way, at least establish his name in a lot of those categories by the time he's out of here.
To me, he's very complete.
I mean,
he can catch. I mean, he's not at the McNichols level yet, or even like Ajayi, but he's not as big as some of those guys. But like,
he's pretty good.
You just kind of if you're seeing that like the draft guys have like the spider web, where it's like, where does he compare in height and 40 time and all that stuff, and the guys that have like the bigger ones. Yeah. His would be pretty sizable. You know what I mean? He's not the biggest out of all of them.
No, but
everything else.
You hear about his strength numbers are off the charts. Yep. He said he's always kind of been like that. Just always been a guy that likes to get in the weight room and prepare and do things the right way.
Yeah, when I talked to DJ Uyunglele, the number one quarterback recruit in the country, he was Georgia's quarterback in high school, and he basically told me, he was just laughing, and he goes, "What you're seeing, this is like the previews. The movie hasn't even started." And that was a great quote, and that was about 2 weeks ago, and I think now we're starting to actually kind of get a glimpse of that.
If you're thinking next year, I mean, like, again, sorry, I'm not trying to like put the cart before the horse, but I think you roll into next year with the expectation that Georgia's going to give you 1,500 yards on the ground. Probably 16, 17 total.
Yeah, you could. I mean, and then also if your quarterback is a young sophomore and he's healthy, and then if he throws for 3,000 or whatever, I mean that's a pretty good offense.
They really do got some pieces that will be coming back next year that should lead to some excitement for this team, but. They to get back to the original point, they absolutely crushed Utah State in every single way, shape, and form. I think they took the spirit of their fan base there, even with them back to Boise, because that fan base, I think they're excited for that game to see if they could hang with Boise and maybe throw an upset at them, and they just could not do it. They didn't even come anywhere close. The mood walking out of that game, I'm sorry to bring it up. I remember walking out of that stadium in 2015 when Boise State had 8 turnovers and they got smashed by the Aggies. Yeah, it was the exact opposite of that. That place felt deflated. Heck, there's barely any fans left at the start of the fourth quarter.
Did you know that attendance was the smallest crowd they played in front of this year?
Really?
There were more at San Jose State.
It doesn't necessarily surprise me just because that was the beginning of Thanksgiving break.
That's true.
That is hard. And they tried all they could. They were giving away free chicken sandwiches and rally towels and everything before the game. It's kind of unfortunate when there's bad timing in games like that where – a lot of people travel home. Right. It is what it is. But
how many people that go to Utah State, though, probably from down the road? I'm just saying.
You think a lot, right? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. I would too.
Anyway.
Yeah. But now it is on to Colorado State after a great effort. Jaylon Henderson looked awesome again against Utah State. With Jaylon, too, we've talked a lot about quarterbacks taking hits this year. I can't think of too many hits that he has taken over the last 2 games. And, man, you go back and you watch Jaylon in the pocket, he really is kind of savvy in there at times. I mean, he knows how to get out of trouble or just move around a little bit and slide and buy time. I mean, he's not Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore just made these like little subtle moves at time that would buy seconds, it seemed. But he is very crafty in the way that he moves around back there.
That was always one of my favorite things. I wrote a story once about the O-line and about Boise State's O-line being so great. And I remember Peterson basically being like, well, Kellen has a lot to do with that. I'm like, we're even going to give him credit for the old line doing well? But yeah, no, and I mentioned it today. My mailbag ran today, and it was like, since I've been around here, Jaylon Henderson has been one of the more impressive things I've seen.
Yeah.
Because the dude starts the season as the number 3 quarterback. Harsin said as much, basically. And then they go and they've scored 98 points in the 2 games he started. And he's thrown 6 touchdown passes.
Yep.
I can't think of very many offenses. Oklahoma, Alabama, maybe. If you put someone in that situation, that they could do that.
That they could do that.
There's not very many in the country. And I know there's been a lot of criticism this year of Hill and all those guys. And I think some of it's warranted. But, like, that right there in action says something about your team, something about how you recruit, something about your system.
Dave, we can go one step further. We've talked a lot about George Holani. Technically, on the depth chart, George Holani is the 3rd string running back. And he might not be now. I say that tongue-in-cheek joking, but he was at one point in time. He was legit the 3rd string running back going into the season.
Yeah.
And there was a shuffling of the deck quite early. But you have 2 guys that you thought were 3rd stringers at very prominent positions that are kind of the backbone of your team right now, probably.
Right now. Yeah. I'd say right now. Absolutely. And sliding door if Van Buren doesn't fumble in that Florida State game.
Exactly.
I mean, Harsin always said all along.
Good hit, good play.
He even told us in July that George Holani was going to have a role. But this, opened the door for him to do that. And then even in that, we're talking about that backbone, but also, too, the defensive performance. They give up 7 points until late in the 3rd quarter. Against a team that was pretty fired up. They had Jordan Love in that game.
And even the 7 that Utah State scored, it took one of the best plays probably of last college football weekend.
It was number one on SportsCenter's top 10.
You got mossed like one-handed grab in the end zone.
Yeah.
It was crazy. I went back and watched it. I still have no idea how that guy caught that pass. But, I mean, that's what it took to even get 7 on the board.
and to get down the field,
Yeah.
Love, I think, had at least 2 passes where I was like, holy crap. You know, like just like first-round passes to even get in that position. So I think that was just pretty impressive. Just the fact that their defense did well. They got obviously the pick 6. Weaver had a sack, and you know they balled out.
Yeah. I you know what, I kind of mentioned too, or forgot that I wanted to mention some numbers on George Holani. He's got more rushing yards than any other true freshman running back in the country. Ole Miss has a quarterback that is a true freshman. He does have more rushing yards than George Holani, so that's why you have to say most rushing yards by a true freshman running back in the country. He's basically the top 5 in every category for a true freshman that there is in terms of running back. Right outside the top 5 in rushing touchdowns, he has 7. He's tied for 6th amongst true freshman running backs in the country, but he just has been unbelievable lately. The last 2 games, 251 yards on 23 carries. He's averaging almost 11 yards a carry. It's crazy. I want to ask you about the quarterback situation because now all of a sudden with the production of Jaylon Henderson, I feel like nobody really there isn't as much of a demand for an update as there once was.
Yes,
right?
That is true.
And it's warranted because Jalen's been great. Like I think that fans are just less concerned because, hey, it's Jaylon. Well, whatever. He's going to be fine. What happens as they get healthier at that position in your eyes? What do they do?
I think my guess is this. This is just an educated guess. Jaylon Henderson still starts Friday. He's done nothing to not deserve it.
Yeah.
I think they can still continue to get Hank healthier. Hank was 7-0 as a starter.
Yep.
Hank was averaging, in games where he went beyond halftime, was averaging almost 300 yards a game.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And so I don't think he did anything to
lose his job. Yeah, I don't think so either.
So if he's 90% even, they're like, well, why make him play?
See, that's what I agree with you. Like, why? And that's my point, Dave. I agree with you, man. Like, I think that Jaylon has bought them time to make sure everybody's full go when they can get them back.
Yep.
Like maybe last week, if Jaylon doesn't do what he did against New Mexico, and I have no clue, but this is just my educated guess, is that maybe you do play a guy at 90%, being like, he's our best shot. But Jalen's playing so well that, yeah, I agree, Dave. I think that, like, you can afford to rest guys up and make sure that they're full go, and it doesn't say that they aren't on alert just in case.
Right. Yeah.
But I do think that it says, like, we have confidence in Jaylon while you heal up and get to 100, and once you're at 100, we'll go from there.
Mountain West Championship coming up.
Yeah.
Can imagine if Hank is 90, that
by the Mountain West title game,
shake off the rust a little bit.
Yeah,
let him play a little bit against CSU, but you start Jaylon, and if Jaylon falters, then you say, okay, I'm putting him in.
By the Mountain West title game, that would be about a month since Hank last played in the game.
Yeah. So there you go. And so, we saw him throwing before the game and everything like that, and that's more than he'd been doing before. So there is a progression that is here, but I think that the biggest luxury that they have is having a guy like Jaylon Henderson to enable those guys to make sure they're back at full strength. And they don't have to put him in. What's
your level of concern at all this week? And I don't mean just the quarterback position, but I mean day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday, afternoon kickoff, which is an anomaly, potential weather, a game that might be hard to get up for because you don't necessarily have to win it to accomplish a number of your goals, which is winning the Mountain West title, and going on and playing in a good bowl game. Like, what's your level of concern on a scale of 1 to 10 this week?
If I was Boise State, like a 3.
Yeah. I'm down there with you. I'm like a 2 or a 3 even, because I just don't think that Colorado State is going to have much to play for.
They don't. But remember last year before Utah State came here, it almost lost its luster when they maybe sort of should have lost at CSU. Remember that game where the guy steps out of bounds and then,
Yep.
So they maybe should have won. Last time they were in Fort Collins, they found out that, as we used to call it, Fort Fun, that it wasn't that way necessarily, but they came back and they won.
That team was better though.
That team was better. Oh God, yeah. That was the year I picked them to win the Mountain Division.
Didn't they had Preston Williams. Gallup was gone. Or was he on that team?
I think this is Gallup's second season. Yeah, so Gallup
he would
was
have been on that team. They had Preston Williams.
Mm-hmm.
They had a seasoned quarterback in Nick Stevens that actually, if you go back and look, the dude was pretty productive.
Mm-hmm.
That team was just better, though. I mean,
it was better. But, I mean, it can be a challenge. If you look at CSU, they started out so terribly.
Mm-hmm.
But their offense is not bad.
They're not bad. They got a receiver.
They always have a receiver.
Yeah.
They always do.
He'll without a doubt give Boise State some fits at some point in time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe it's actually Boise State's benefit if it snows and you take away some opportunities from that guy because he is so much of their offense over
Warren Jackson.
almost 1,100 total or 1,100 receiving yards almost this season.
And he's like 6'6".
Yeah, he's big.
And they go to him a lot, and he usually comes down with
Mm-hmm.
it. And so, I mean, that would be the only real concern, I think. Even if there's a little bit of weather, as Mr. Colorado, I wouldn't be too concerned about it in this case. It can be worse there. This one, I doubt it, if it gets late in the game and it's still close, maybe, because that's when maybe the weather's supposed to probably get going once it really starts dipping below freezing. But otherwise, it might be a little wet, and it's hovering around freezing, kind of similar weather to what they played last week in Logan, and they did fine with that.
One unfortunate thing about this game, and I'm going to take a moment to look at the bigger picture here, Dave. Boise State and Colorado State kick off at 1:30 on Friday afternoon.
Same
on
time?
CBS Sports Network.
Mm-hmm.
At that same exact time, Cincinnati and Memphis, the two other teams battling for that top spot in the group of five, kick off at 1:30, and they get the big stage, ABC,
right. Yeah.
national television.
Yeah. Yep. I mean,
that's going to be unfortunate. There's going to be a lot more eyes on that Memphis-Cincinnati game than there will be on Boise State.
Sure, but all Boise State needs to do is just win.
Mm-hmm.
And Curtis Weaver actually even it's always when guys actually admit that they sometimes think about those big games. Like when Rippon was like, that's my last thing I've left to do.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't quite make one. Didn't make one. Weaver did mention, like, hey, they have a pyramid right at the top, making your 6 bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So they had that opportunity. And really all they have to do is win this game. Because Cincinnati and Memphis, whoever loses that one's going to fall behind.
I do think style points might – oh, gosh, I'm getting sucked in.
Do you think they'll matter?
I think they – I think – I don't know if they matter as much for Cincinnati or Memphis as they would for Boise State, just because.
So Cincy and Memphis play a close game that whoever loses might not fall behind Boise State?
I don't know. I think Boise State needs, if they can, it would not hurt to win by a big margin this week. Let's just say that.
Sure, I'm sure they wouldn't mind.
It's interesting to me, though. I think that if you look at the resumes of these teams, I have no problem with – I don't have a problem with Memphis being ahead of Boise State right now. I don't.
No.
But I think it's weird that Cincinnati is. I think if you look at what Cincinnati has endured, especially recently, Boise State deserves to be ranked ahead of Cincinnati. I think the one thing that the College Football Playoff Committee did this week, though, is I think their thought was, you know what? We'll just let it be decided on the field. We'll rank them both ahead of Boise State, and whoever loses is going to drop behind, and whoever wins is going to remain in front.
Yeah.
You know, let them decide it on the field versus us deciding. But
Cincinnati's played just some gross games.
They have.
But if you want to go on the same token, granted, maybe we're talking about different levels of competition. Boise State beat Marshall by 7, beat Florida State by 5, lost to BYU by 3, beat Wyoming by 3, beat San Jose State by 10. Those are close games.
They are.
But Cincinnati's have been against worse teams.
They have. So Cincinnati's ranked 19th in the country. They're 10-1. Their best win, UCF, who is 8-3 and not in the top 25 right now. They were when Cincinnati beat them. They are not right now. Their one loss, 42-0 against the best team in the country, Ohio State. They're ranked number 1 right now. For the life of me, I feel like that should mean something. Because, I was thinking, when has Boise State ever had a performance like that? And I go, okay, you know what? It immediately jumped into my mind, Washington, 2013, got boat raced up there, 38-6. But then immediately clicked, too, that the worst season in recent history for Boise State
was 2013.
2013. So when Boise State's been at their best, they have never been blown out like that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. What was the year they lost to Washington State, 58-0 or whatever?
That was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. We're probably going 20 plus years.
In one of these seasons where they have been contending for a spot in a New Year's Six or something alike,
they never do.
They've never just been boat raced by a team like that. I know they're number 1 in the country. I get it. but to not even score? I mean, like, I don't know. I feel like that means something.
Watching Cincinnati play,
their offense isn't great.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to get to this now. Close calls for Cincinnati. They beat ECU, a 4-7 team, by 3 points.
Second field goal.
They beat UCF, a 4-7 team, by 3 points.
USF.
Sorry, thank you. Beat USF, a 4-7 team, by 3 points.
USF missed 4 field goals.
Temple, they did. They missed a number of field goals. And they beat Temple this last weekend by 2. But you know what happened in that game, don't you, Dave?
I do, because you and I were sitting next to each other dying. It would have become a 14-13 game.
Mm-hmm.
But Cincinnati blocked the extra point and ran it back.
Yep. So instead of leading by 1, you are now trailing by 2.
Yep.
Man, there is some luck in that. And it kind of makes me realize when you look at Boise State's schedule, the Broncos haven't benefited from a ton of luck this year. They really haven't. Like, I think you have to say, like, everything had to go right for them to make their comeback against Florida State. But I don't know. I think that they earned it. I don't think like anything was necessarily given to them in that game.
And then they had it in the bag, at least went up ahead for good for what? Last 12 minutes?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it's not these like last couple minute swings. Like the close call.
Even Wyoming's missed kick.
The one close call, we'll talk about Wyoming. They beat close call was against a 7-4 Wyoming team. Like I said, Cincinnati had close calls against 2 4-7 teams and a 7-4 team. Boise State's one close call, a game decided, near the end of the fourth quarter or overtime, and that was against a 7-4 Wyoming team. But still, they went out and they scored the game-tying touchdown. They kicked the game-winning field. They weren't relying on Wyoming to have bad luck or do something negative. Mm-hmm. Boise State went out and did it.
Yeah.
And I know that Wyoming missed a kick at the end of that game, but still, it would have tied it. Boise State would still have a chance to go win it. It wasn't like, which leads me to my next point, Memphis. Memphis has been great. They have wins over SMU and Navy. Both SMU's 9-2, Navy's 8-2. They've lost to Temple. They did have their starting quarterback, by the way. Boise State's one loss against a 7-4 BYU. The Broncos did not have their starting quarterback.
Neither did BYU.
Their close call. Neither did BYU. Okay, that's fine. Their close call was a game at Tulsa. Tulsa is 3-8. And the reason why Memphis is still the top-ranked team in the group of 5 is because the Golden Hurricanes missed a 29-yard field goal as time expired.
Yeah.
I mean, so, like, if you look at Memphis and Cincinnati, like, they have had some luck, I would say, involved in the bigger picture, where Boise State, they really haven't. And I want to bring up something about the starting quarterback debate. The only reason, and some fans have asked me about this on Twitter, like, why is Boise State being penalized for it? Well, I think that it only matters if you get your starting quarterback back, because that means that's if somebody's saying that you weren't at your best without your starting quarterback, why would you give them the benefit of the doubt of being better? You know what I mean? Like, you have to get your starting quarterback back for them to be like, okay.
To have a measuring stick.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I still say that Memphis deserves the nod right now, but I don't think that Boise State should be behind Cincinnati. I think that I think that the committee's just like, let them decide it on the field, though, because it's going to happen this week.
Maybe Memphis is like Alsace. They can run the ball really hard right at you. They can throw it a little bit. Sometimes they can look a little ugly, and then all of a sudden, by the end, you're like, oh, that was great.
They're up by 20.
Yeah.
That was a great performance.
That team, when you watch them, it's unreal. Like, there's times where you're just like I've said it out loud that with them in Cincinnati, I will never, update fans on the score until after halftime.
Oh, because so much can happen.
Yeah, but it's always like they start, they're like, well, they're down 14-0. And then they score 4 touchdowns within 8 minutes. And you're like, oh.
They're up 14. They're up 14.
They're up 14
now. And it really is. And they have a running back. Hey, I'm just saying, Memphis has a running back, Kenneth Patwell, right?
Yeah.
I think that's it. I don't know. I know his first name's Kenneth.
Yeah, it is Kenneth.
Number 19. He is like Jay Ajayi in terms of production.
Oh, that guy's unbelievable.
There was a while there, and I don't even know if he still might be, but he's leading the team in rushing yards, obviously. But there was a while where he's leading the team in receiving yards, too.
Redshirt freshman, right?
Redshirt freshman. He is outstanding.
Yeah.
Dynamic, fun to watch. Ugh. But it'll be interesting. I don't think that Boise State can catch a one-loss ACC champ. I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't think it will either.
I think they need either Cincy or Memphis will trade wins the next 2 weeks, or Navy gets into the title game and wins. Mm-hmm. But I just don't see at the moment.
Right. So the important caveat is Cincinnati's already in the conference championship. If they beat Memphis, then they will probably play Navy.
They will play Navy.
And then if Navy wins, Navy's behind Boise State. That's the ideal situation.
That's the ideal situation. Navy already has 2 losses. You need the ACC champ to have 2 losses regardless of who it is.
AAC. And then
American Athletic Conference.
And then but if Memphis wins this weekend, they're going to be playing Cincinnati again next week.
Correct.
So
that's why one way or the other, you need both those teams. You need the AAC champ to have 2 losses. Okay, we're going to wrap this up by talking about our postseason Mountain West Awards, which, man, offensive player of the year, it is a convoluted pool. So do you want to start with the hard or go easy by talking about the defensive player of the year or something first?
Let's talk about the hard part.
Okay.
We're voters.
This is going to take a moment because I have no clue. And I think that Josh Love at San Jose State should be at least considered. But, man, if the Spartans lose this last weekend, Dave, they finish 4-8 overall on the year, well out of bowl contention, and in last place in the division.
Yeah.
How can the offensive player of the year come from a team like that?
UNLV.
I just have a tough time. Yeah,
Yeah, and
if you consider Josh Love, or if you say, oh, well, you can't dock him totally because of his team sucked, well, then that means you have to consider Charles Williams of UNLV because he has over 1,100 yards rushing.
Exactly. No, that's a great caveat right there. And no problem voting those guys, say, first team all conference if you were to do that.
Yep.
But the all conference player, I mean, the name that's popped up to me, and I always call him Daryl Hammond because of Saturday Night Live, but is Donald Hammond III, the quarterback at Air Force. His completion percentage, not great. It's like 51%.
Triple option QBs are tough to evaluate because their numbers are split between passing and rushing.
Right.
But he's a guy with over 20 total touchdowns on the year, 1,200 passing yards, almost 600 rushing yards. Triple option quarterbacks are tough to evaluate, but given what the success and production that he's brought to a team that is on the verge of I'm really sure they're going to be 10-2 after this week. I think I'm leaning him right now, Dave.
That's kind of the way I've gone. I could be convinced otherwise, I guess. But Josh Love certainly would warrant, consideration.
Yep. You gotta talk yourself through the process.
But like you said, there's Charles Williams, but there's like, okay, it's not like Cole McDonald's played all season at Hawaii.
And
Chevin Cordero's played a lot.
That's what you want to point to Cole. 26 touchdowns. That looks good. 13 picks. And then you watch some of these games, and like Cole's been pulled a number of times. So your best offensive player of the of the Mountain West of this year has been pulled a number of times in his own games. What?
So I mean, at the moment, maybe Hammond. And then, I mean, there's been guys like, Hightower's had a really good season, but let me
phrase it for you another way. If it was
Warren Jackson, the aforementioned Warren Jackson, but it's like,
But again, a team that's probably going to go 4-7 or 4-8.
Yeah.
You bring up Hightower. If the award wasn't Mountain West Offensive Player of the Year, if it was most explosive player in the conference,
right?
I mean, he gets the award.
Or if it was just like, even like Player of the Year, you would consider it because he's got a kickoff return touchdown and stuff like that. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, like he would be that guy. But
the crazy thing is that I feel like you could make a case that John should be in the conversation to win Offensive Player of the Year in the Mountain West. We get to see him every week. But I think that there are other people out there that might say, like, he doesn't even deserve to be on first team, which is a lower award than Offensive Player of the Year. Yeah, because there's a couple 1,000-yard receivers in the conference. Hawaii has a couple of very productive wide receivers.
And those two almost negate. I don't know if they negate themselves. They have very similar stats. So yeah, so offensive player very tough.
Yep.
Defensive
easy layup.
Probably got to be Weaver. Preseason conference defensive player of the year.
How isn't it?
13.5 sacks now.
That guy changes the game week in, week out.
And he's one that everyone always keys on. It's not like he's coming out of nowhere where it's like, eventually they adjusted to him. No one
They try to stop him, and they still have a tough time stopping him. And the one time he doesn't get doubled a game, it seems like that's when he makes you pay. I mean, I don't know. That might seem biased, but I think Curtis Weaver's a very easy decision.
Yeah, I saw some tweets. People were like, oh, you got to consider Halliburton, the corner over at Wyoming.
I get you.
Very good.
Very good.
Logan Wilson, very good.
Logan Wilson's another guy. Like, if you want to make an argument, Logan Wilson, he could be the guy. I just have a tough time like putting way too much into tackle numbers because school to
That's
school,
why I
man,
love Jelani Tavai.
Tackle numbers can really, yes. tackle numbers can really be inflated by some schools where it's like, oh, look at Dave was around the pile, help make the tackle, give him an assist.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden he's got like, how's that guy at 182 tackles? You know, like.
What can I say? I'm a beast.
Yeah, you are. You are.
That happened to me one time where I voted Ryan Watkins like first team all conference, and someone had been like, I had got a tweet from someone who was like, well, that's how Boise State's system is. They shoot threes, and I'm like, well, he's still getting the damn rebounds, but like with the tackles and stuff, that one's a little that one you don't put as much stock into. But I always love Tavai because he just filled the stat sheet.
You bring up Logan Wilson. I do want to say, man, like love watching that kid play.
Yeah.
That kid does it the right way, plays hard, does everything for that defense.
In that last game, they were talking about like how much he loves the state of Wyoming. They showed him sit on the bench, takes off his helmet. Dude has a bandana that has a state flag on it. And I was like, that's the most Wyoming guy ever. And he was probably wearing, oh God, what are the Carhartts? Probably wearing those under the under.
Yeah, right.
Special Teams Player of the Year. Avery Williams?
I want to make a push for Avery. I shouldn't phrase it that way. I think that Avery should be considered. He's the only player in the country with multiple punt returns for touchdowns.
Yeah.
He also just blocked a punt. So he's returning them. He's blocking them. He blocked a kick earlier this year. He's tied, so that ties him for first in the country with blocked kicks with 2. Not that great of a number, but still, like it's like
something.
He's tied for first in the country, meaning nobody has more. Nobody has more block kicks. Nobody has more punt returns for touchdowns. He's averaging almost 13 yards per punt return, which puts him in the top 10 in the FBS.
He hasn't fumbled any this year.
No.
You know, he did last year.
He catches a lot too. Like.
It's and if we want to keep honestly. Like this is funny because like a lot of times I've always posted my votes. I don't know if maybe I will because now with the Athletic it just doesn't work, like there's not like a blog, but usually I don't vote Boise State guys. But I keep thinking about it. Freshman of the year, is it George Holani at this point? Probably. Coach of the year. I almost never vote for the Boise State coach just because I always think, well, that's the expectation. This is what they're supposed to do. But as we said, if
you want to make an argument, this could be the year
you've only had one other team since 2010 go unbeaten in conference play. They're down to their third quarterback. They have handled everything in conference as they should. I would lean Harsin.
They've replaced injured guys so well that you kind of forget about the injured guys. Zeke Noah is going to be a huge part of this defense. Ben Wickersham's done a great job filling in. I'm not saying Zeke's not great, by the way, but I'm just saying like they have found a way to plug and play. DeAndre Pierce, a pivotal part of this defense. They found guys that could step in.
Yeah.
If you want to make a case this year, this is the year to do it. I think Nick Rolovich deserves strong consideration. Even Troy Calhoun, for that matter, deserves strong consideration.
I at least had Hawaii second to finish second in the division. So like usually it's someone that really exceeds expectations. And Hawaii has to an extent, but, you know, they're going to end up probably, 8-4? Which is good.
Well, they're 8-4 now. Well, aren't they 8-4 now?
Yeah, they got 13.
Yeah. So they could be 8-6.
Right. They could.
Because they play a non-conference game this week before they play Boise State. They could also be 10-4, right? You know, I don't know, whatever.
So the all-conference teams come out next Wednesday. So part of the reason why we're discussing it now is our votes are due this weekend.
Yep.
And then they'll be announced Wednesday. So I will probably record it.
Yeah. Right about
after,
the time. We'll try to do it after because we want to give you the preview now. We'll give you the reaction next week.
Correctamundo. So there you go.
Yeah. Get you ready for the Mountain West Conference Championship game.
There is a method to this madness.
There is.
What else we got? There was one other thing. Oh, Boise State basketball won triple OT.
Triple OT.
That was fun watching that in the press box.
They won 2 games in overtime last week. BYU in OT and then triple overtime against Pacific.
Which this team couldn't win those games last year, and they have so far this year. So that's a good sign for them.
Jessup, it seems like he is really emerging as a closer.
And with all of the attributes that Leon likes about Abu, and so when they get him, it really might again help them win those closer games, just because he seems to be that. I don't want to say even a glue guy because he's going to be more of a contributor than your typical glue guy, but he's going to be the fiery leader type that's going to get guys
right. If you go to practice, Abu is a fun guy to watch.
Yeah.
He does bring a lot of fire. He's one of those guys that you have him and then he leaves, and then the year that he's gone, you kind of look around and be like, why is it so quiet at practice? Where's the energy? Abu's an energy guy. He's really good in those regards.
He also fills the Dave Wojcik, Jeff Linder, Phil Beckner void in a way.
Getting fired, fiery.
Yeah.
Not fired, fiery. Fiery. we're running out of time, but before we leave you, we do have to mention the College of Idaho football team. They hung 70 on Ottawa in their opening round playoff game. I got a really snarky email, by the way, about where Ottawa was located. I went out to the talked to the Yotes last week. No, it wasn't about the podcast. I was joking around on the newscast. The guys out in Caldwell were joking around. I was joking around with them. Be honest, did you have to Google to find out where Ottawa University was? And every one of them was like, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I was joking around, and there was an email that very politely pointed out that they originated in Kansas and moved to Arizona, and they've only been in Arizona for 2 years, which is
it's a second campus.
Right, correct, yeah. Which is basically though what we pointed out, that they have a campus in Arizona, and they've only established that for 2 years now, and that they're originally originated from Ottawa, Kansas.
Yep.
I thought it was hilarious. But they are marching on. They got to go out on the road this week.
Thanks to Professor Wikipedia. Uh-huh. That was big help on that one.
Really excited about the Yotes.
Yeah, hung 70.
And there is a chance. One of the best days in Treasure Valley football. I'm going to back it off because I would say history, because the Fiesta Bowls were kind of big.
Well, you say Treasure Valley, and it's one day.
But potentially, yeah.
Involve multiple teams.
On December 21st, you could have Boise State playing in the Vegas Bowl and the College of Idaho playing in the NAI National Championship. It would be awesome. So cool. And it would kick off within hours of each other.
Which one? You'd be in Vegas, though, wouldn't you?
We'd be in Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah. We'd be in Vegas. But
and
we'd definitely be paying attention, that's for sure.
You'd be walking around with your gold-dipped shoes because of all the money we won while we were there.
That happens?
Mm-hmm.
Gosh,
oh, yeah.
I wish.
Oh, yeah.
If it ever does, I'm getting gold-dipped shoes, without a doubt. Dave, it's been fun. Safe travels to snowy Fort Collins this week. I know you get to go see some fam.
Going back home.
It's going to be snowy, but more than anything, happy Thanksgiving to all of you out there that listen.
We appreciate all of you.
Whoever watches, we do.
We're thankful for you.
We are thankful for you. And on that note, thanks. We'll see you next week on Jay and Dave's Sports Bar, serving the Idaho sports community.